Hello and welcome to another edition of Marlins Monday. It is Monday, July 7th, 2025. My name is Eric Wiedeke. You can follow me on X/Twitter at Eric Wiedeke. And before we do go any further, I do just want to remind everybody to like, comment, and subscribe as it helps grow what we do on the 5 Reasons Sports Network YouTube channel, covering the Marlins, the Heat, the Panthers, the Hurricanes, Inter Miami, you name it. If it's South Florida sports, we have it covered over there. So I do just want to encourage you guys to like, comment, and subscribe. It does help what we do on the channel there. But getting into the Marlins this week, it was a 3-3 week, winning 2 out of 3 versus the Twins, and then dropping 2 out of 3 versus the Brewers. Brewers series loss being the first in 5 for the Marlins. And it was a tightly contested series. They lose the first game by 1, come back and win the second game. Agustin Ramirez with the go-ahead runs in the 8th inning for the Fish. And then yesterday, Brandon Woodruff in his return 2 calendar years away, just absolutely dealing for the Brewers. And Edward Cabrera nearly matched him pitch for pitch if it weren't for a Brian Chorio 2-run homer in the 3rd inning that would prove to be the difference for the Milwaukee Brewers in that one. You know, one of the things that did happen that might be a little bit of that you hope is kind of correcting that would kind of correct itself before you go into Cincinnati is that the bats did go a little bit cold in that series. Against Milwaukee specifically in the last 2 days. You look at guys like Otto Lopez, who struggled in that Milwaukee series. Dane Myers has been struggling mightily of late. He might need a day off or 2. We'll see what happens with him as he looks like he got a little shaken up in an outfield collision there with Jesus Sanchez. So we'll see what that ends up looking like, if there's any kind of IL stint or days off that are spawned from that. I'm not sure about an IL stint, but I do think it would probably do Dane well to have at least a day off or 2 in this upcoming series against Cincinnati, and a Reds club that's playing a pretty good brand of baseball right now. So it'll be a very interesting series for the Marlins, one that you would hope that the bats kind of wake back up for, as it's going to be at the, Great American Ballpark, more of a hitter's ballpark by just about any measure. And you're going to need guys like Agustin Ramirez to step back up. Kyle Stowers has been great. We're going to talk about him being named his first All-Star team. Just want to give him a quick congratulations. He's absolutely deserved it. You look at some of the guys that were passed up for the All-Star team, and, Kyle Stowers belongs. You look at the OPS, you look at the homers, you look at the runs batted in. Just in terms of overall production, Kyle Stowers, he fits in. There's no, he's not your Marlins. Oh, well, we have to get a guy in, kind of obligatory pick. I mean, yes, literally that's what he is, but he's not that because he doesn't deserve it. He's only that because, the Marlins don't get the national recognition typically. But if he were playing in New York or Boston or Chicago, he would have been voted in as an all-star. So I do just want to give Kyle Stowers his flowers for that, because it really is a remarkable story to have a guy that went from struggles as bad as he had to now being an all-star when he was traded for, especially when you consider that he was the guy that was kind of considered the throw-in in that deal in addition to Connor Norby, who was the headliner. And really, it almost looks like that deal is kind of, that those perceptions have kind of flipped on their head here, as Norby has struggled. You still have 74, 75 games remaining in the season, so I wouldn't say that Norby's year is lost just yet to this point, but I do think that there's some really tough conversations you're going to have if he doesn't turn things around and quickly for the Fish here. But that is enough of the Stowers conversation. As mentioned, congratulations to him. It's a fantastic story. But just getting back to the team in general, I think that there's a blueprint that they've got here over the recent weeks that if they can even just hit to an average level, I think that they'll be just fine. Because when you look at the production that they've been getting from their starters, whether it's Junk or Cabrera or Perez of late, or even Quantrill lately has been okay. And then you look at the bullpen and what they've been able to do. Yeah, sure, Belloso gave up a run in 2 innings yesterday, but I think that's 4 runs now and 18 in the 3rd innings in the last few weeks. I mean, they've been just absolutely untouchable in the bullpen, whether it's Tyler Phillips, Lake Bacher, Cade Gibson, Josh Simpson, Ronnie Enriquez, Anthony Bander, Calvin Fauché. I mean, there's just so many options they can go to in the bullpen right now that there's really no bad options for Clayton McCullough late innings. I'm not sure that there's been a bullpen where you have as many different guys that have a save this season. Lake Bacher got his first save of the year on Saturday night. Ronnie Enriquez has been a closer for you at points this year. Bender's closed games for you. Fauché has closed games for you. Belloso, I'm sure, even has a save. Junk had a save when he was working out of the bullpen. The bullpen has been doing yeoman's work for the Marlins all year long, well, specifically over these last few months. And I think that's something that's going to continue here, and it's something that is going to be really valuable for them as they go into this deadline. Which brings me to another really interesting topic to talk about here, and that's going to be Edward Cabrera, right? Because you talk about a guy in Cabrera who I think everybody, when this whole streak of 10-11 starts now, it started, everybody was kind of looking at Cabrera as, okay, well, it's going to be really nice to get to trade this guy and, you're going to flip him for value as soon as he pitches well. And it seems like there's been this collective shift towards, it went from, I'm really excited we're going to trade Edward Cabrera to, well, maybe we'll get a really good package for Edward Cabrera too. Do we really have to trade Edward Cabrera? I mean, it's been easily the most consistent stretch of his career to this point. You go back now, it is 11 consecutive starts with 3 runs or fewer, all since the start of May. He went 7 innings yesterday, 2 earned runs, no walks, and 7 innings for the first time for back-to-back starts. He was the first starter to go 7 for the Marlins on the first against Minnesota, and then he's now the second starter to go 7 in his follow-up start against the Brewers. So Cabrera not only showing off that he does have that consistency, but he's also showing off that he can give you that length, that he can eat those innings. And this is where I think the Marlins are in kind of an interesting predicament here because, now I do think that there's genuine kind of questioning as to whether or not Cabrera is a piece that you even want to part with. Because if you're going into next year with a rotation at the top of Perez, Cabrera, and Weathers, depending on what kind of Cabrera you're getting, I think you're looking at that as a really formidable top 3. Now, the reason why I think people are so apprehensive on Cabrera now is because really in trading Cabrera and just to take this back a little bit, I think the idea behind trading Cabrera was one that I don't think anybody ever really wanted to trade Edward Cabrera. It was always something that the team kind of had to do. Because everybody from day one, the talent has been evident with Edward Cabrera, but it was always this kind of like, we're kind of resigned to, yeah, well, he just hasn't been consistent enough. He's had long enough to show it, and he hasn't been able to do it. So unfortunately, we're going to have to trade him because, as tempting as the talent is, you can't wait forever on a guy. And Edward Cabrera may be turning that corner at the last second here. And really, he's doing, if this were a really good stretch with two or three bad starts peppered in, I think everybody would be really on board with the idea of, yeah, well, capitalize, get what you can. But now you're in a situation where it's just been so consistent, and it's been so there's been you can see a tangible difference. This isn't just a guy that looks the same and is just getting lucky. He's walked 18 batters over his last 55 and 2/3 innings since the beginning of May. So there's absolutely been a tangible difference there. His walks per 9 is below 3 over the last few months, which for Cabrera is a feat because his career low is 4 walks per 9. And so I think right now you look at him as a guy that maybe you want to hold on to. I mean, granted, unless a team just gives you a superstar level package for the guy, then I think, yeah, absolutely, you're forced to listen. But, the question then becomes, well, considering what you have at other spots and what you have in the minors, how much selling do you need to do to get to where you need to go organizationally? And I do wonder if the timeline here shifted a little bit, maybe not necessarily to this season. And I wouldn't purport that because, being 7.5 games out of the wild card, I don't think anybody's talking, this team competing for a playoff spot this season. But I do think that conversation is now kind of opened up for 2026. I think it's certainly there for 2027. And the question becomes, okay, well, can you get enough out of, selling off maybe a couple of bullpen pieces, selling off on Quantrill? Could you still get a really valuable piece for Sandy? I think you still could, because of the fact that, yes, he has been kind of touched up in his last couple starts, but he's completed 6 innings in each of those starts. And it's really been kind of that one bad inning again, like we kind of saw when he left off in 2023, where he would pitch really well for the majority of the game, but there was just one inning that would kind of blow up for him. And that's a little bit of what we've seen with Sandy this year as well, or of late especially. But Sandy in general, being able to show off that he can go and eat those innings, 6 innings in his last 2 starts here, I think maybe keeps his value a little bit higher. So, I mean, you're talking about two bullpen guys, Sandy, Quantrill. I think Jesus Sanchez is going to get dealt. And I think this is probably a pretty good time to deal Jesus Sanchez. He's playing pretty well right now. And a guy that I didn't want to part with as much, but I think you have to consider it now, is Dane Myers. I still think that he's a good center fielder. I don't think that the slump is closer to who he is. I think, you look at some of the batted ball stuff with Dane over the last couple of weeks. I mean, he's really going through it. He's not squaring the ball up very well. He's not hitting it very hard. But I think you look at what he was doing at the beginning of the season and what he did in the glimpses of time that he got to play in 2023 and 2024. And I think that you can pretty clearly see that he is a much better hitter than what he's been lately. And then he gives you a really solid defensive center field, and he's got a lot of team control. So again, I think he's a guy that if you're getting decent value in a trade, I think you can absolutely do it. And so then, I do think, well, do you need to trade Cabrera to get a representative haul at this deadline to really set yourself up, especially considering, the draft upcoming at the All-Star break. Now, every team is going to think that they had a great draft. The Marlins are going to pick players, and they're going to like the players that they picked, and they're going to think that they had a great draft and that they've set themselves up well for the future. It's just how it's going to go down. And so I do think that there's a possibility here that we're looking at a team that does just trade Sandy, just trade Quantrill, couple bullpen arms, Sanchez and Myers. Now that's 6 players. You're selling off 6 players, still selling. But I think that sends a clear message. Number one, that you're not pushing your window back necessarily as far as when you think you can compete for a playoff spot. But also, number 2, that's not selling necessarily in the same way that trading Cabrera, trading guys like, I've seen Stowers kicked around. I wouldn't would signal to the fan base. I think Otto Lopez is a fringe guy. Maybe he gets dealt, maybe he doesn't. He has struggled a little bit more lately. Now, granted, I still think in general Otto has been fantastic this season. He's been one of your more valuable players. So I think unless a team really knocks your socks off, you probably do keep him around. But I think Cabrera is, especially depending on what he does in this next couple series here, over the course of the next couple weeks leading into the deadline, if he continues on what he's been doing, I think he will make himself, borderline untradeable for this ball club. And that's, not a bad thing whatsoever. But we will see you guys next Monday. My name is Eric Wiedeke. You can follow me on X/Twitter at Eric Wiedeke. Just a programming note, I will be on the Fish on First stream this evening at 6 p.m. talking with the guys and previewing the Marlins' upcoming series against the Cincinnati Reds. So looking forward to that. It's going to be a ton of fun. Hope you guys are checking that out. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week for another edition of Marlins Monday. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye-bye.